to talk a little bit about the Workforce Star solution, what it is. Chris is going to provide a demo. So what is the Workforce Star solution? The reason why we call it a solution to begin with is it's not a software package because it's taken advantage of leveraging what you've got in your ArcGIS applications. And so it's designed as taking all of the different Survey 1, 2, 3, collector, workforce, those things, and linking them together to come up with a business solution to get you away from the old paper workflows if you had those, capturing information on the work that you do on an asset, capture condition scores based on things that you do observe during an inspection, so you can start to list those assets that aren't in the greatest of conditions. So it's starting you out on that path of getting information to managers that you can start to look at, okay, what assets are causing a problem, what are the inspection programs that we have? Should we increase our inspections due to the amount of failures we get? Should we decrease our inspections because we're not getting failures? And so we're using up, staff time to do things that maybe not be necessary. So it's all of that ability to start to turn this into information that you can use. Just sort of a picture diagram. It kind of gives you that look of what the different things that you've got to understand what you've got, capture information, monitor, find out what's going on, coordinating the work efforts that you've got, sending people to the right place at the right time, and making sure that, well, if the person has to drive out to that part of the county, they might as well do 3 jobs that are out there as opposed to going back the next day. So it's making that visual look of where the work needs to be done and what's the best way to utilize your crews. What we call the building blocks, we take a look at your assets, just get a bit of an idea of what kind of condition your asset inventory is in, and nobody has an up-to-date inventory, so you don't need to have it completely 100% to start doing this. This actually helps you improve the condition of and the quality of your asset inventory, because as people are out there doing things, they can update the information, or if they're out there doing a hydrant inspection and there's a hydrant that's not shown on the map for whatever reason it got missed, well, then you can get that information collected. It's also looking at the service requests, the work assignments that you've got, so that you're understanding what efforts you're putting into what areas against what types of activities, whether you're being driven by reactive maintenance and 70% of your work is answering emergencies on the phone, or are you trying to move yourself into a place where the majority of your work is planned, which is a nice place to be. And then obviously analyzing all of that work and all that information that you've got. So any asset that you've got, traditionally you look at water lines, roads, those kinds of things, things that you can see on a map, a hydrant, street lights, any of that. Where people sort of don't realize you can do things with the GIS is those non-spatial type assets. So inside a facility, fleet, those kinds of things that maybe you don't notice it for in a building. For example, in a building, you may have a lot of assets inside the building. So it's that ability to see the assets inside the building and being able to store all this on your GIS. And we work with you on setting all of that up. Just some screenshots, this is what a supervisor in the office is going to see. There's all the hydrants that need to be inspected. So who do I assign this to? The person in the field looking at the similar map on their smart device or their phone, their iPad, whatever you've got for collecting things in the field. Just that empowering the worker, taking all of this in the field, making it simple, making it easy for them to fill out forms. They're not doing a lot of typing. There's voice to text recognition, so they can talk into it, and it'll put the comments in for them. Everything that you can do that makes it easier for the person to use these devices and do all the work that's necessary and not have to come back to the office or sit in the cab and fill out paper forms and do all of that. Looking at, if you see on the left, there's 3 people, Mike Klossenheim, Schwartz, and Matt Peterson, and you see what work's been assigned to people. So okay, well, if I'm the supervisor, Matt hasn't got any work assigned to him, so I can now start loading up his work day or his week, and you can see the work that's been assigned to the individuals. Again, simple forms to fill in, easy to click on the radial buttons and doing the types of inspections that need to be done. This is a good one. Looking at, if you can see down the bottom where it says responses above are used to calculate a final response or a follow-up flag. So in this case, whether it's maintenance is required or not. So if you're out there and you're inspecting a lot of culverts or inspecting a lot of hydrants, whatever it is that you're doing, depending upon what you say, that maintenance required might go from a no to a yes. So now back in the office, the supervisor can say, show me all the hydrant inspections where maintenance is required, and up pop 10 out of the 400 hydrants that were inspected. So now you're not having to manually go through everyone to see what's needed, but you're now being directed to exactly what hydrants need to be worked on, what work is required, and who do I send out there to do that work. And whether it's a hydrant, whether it's a culvert, whether it's bridges, whatever it is, you've got that capability. And again, Chris is going to show some stuff on dashboards to see, how many hydrants have been inspected, flushed, which ones need to be repainted. So that again, turning that information, all that data into things that you can visually see, and then you can filter through. That's the big savings in some respects, is being able to filter through and then looking at the things that really need your attention, as opposed to trying to guess what needs to be done.
And just quickly review the workflow and the elements that we use. On the outside of this ring, we'll start to pop up some Esri technology. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these names and they resonate. And then as others watch this recording, it's really important too also to look at just the bubbles that will appear on the ring itself, because these are going to align themselves to the business problems that the business is trying to solve. And this is all about a common use framework. Like Bill said earlier, this is a solution, not a single piece of software. And as a result, it can be adopted for numerous different business processes. So let's go through the workflow at a high level. And we can sometimes, even depending on the workflow, completely omit some of these steps, add additional steps, because it's a framework. And that's one of the value adds to this process, is its high degree of flexibility and adaptability to some existing processes in your organization. So generally speaking, with most processes, not all though, is that there's some initiator, that catalyst that causes us to be aware that there is work that needs to be done. And so for a general purpose and noun, requests would be the word that we would use to describe this, and often flow out to assignments. And that's sort of our next step in the process, is how do we start to respond to this incident? At the request level, we might even introduce things that are public facing. And the citizen reporter solution is a great ArcGIS solution that's available to get that public engagement, to provide a common workflow through to public works to start initiating requests for service. And it can be added to the additional processes that already exist in terms of email or phone, but they can also be used to standardize those processes to basically eliminate duplicate data entry if that's a problem the organization is struggling with. So obviously we have this second step on the right here now, introducing ArcGIS Workforce, is just that capability for supervisory staff, foremen, whatever it might be in the organization, to coordinate the staff they do have, contractors, and give them assignments to start responding. Look at their workload. Do they have capacity and capability? Optionally, you might need to know how to get where you're going. If you have a very large jurisdiction and you haven't been to that specific site or location before, or a resident's home in the case of the pump scenario that we were just talking about, you might want some driving directions as how to best get there. Moving down around now, a couple of additional bubbles have been added. One is speaking to the fact that we're now into sort of the meat of the work process. And this is where we really want to start working with our asset inventory. We've identified what asset we're working with. And if we don't have an inventory, as Bill mentioned, this is that opportunity to improve the integrity of the data set. Let's capture that data. Let's update its attribute information. Let's move the geometry to the correct location if it was digitized in a temporary space and place when it was first added. And now that there's ground truthing available, boots on the ground, why not correct that and put it into the actual location of the asset being there? And so the asset inventory is obviously ArcGIS. That's our system of record in this particular model. And we're using applications like field maps to interact with the asset inventory, make updates to it, and add new ones. But on top of that, we're using form-based interfaces like Survey123 and Quick Capture to start logging information, whether it's our inspections, our work orders, additional defects that we're finding as we're moving at speed. And as the process matures, we move into more of a system of engagement with that monitoring stage, where lots of data is being created, workflows have to be administered, and we generally recommend using the ArcGIS dashboard product for that. And what's really great about this is multiple different dashboards can be created for different needs in the organization, from the work coordinators to the analysts to council or the public, people that need to have some oversight and transparency into an individual process. So like I mentioned, this is a framework solution. And based on that, we can wrap that in whatever wrapper that is most appropriate, and depending on what technology is available for the customer. So we've used things like story maps as a container. We also love to use Experience Builder. This allows for really great workflows that actually starts to make all of what we're looking at in the center here, from an office or field perspective, start to look a little more transparent. And for end users that don't have any Esri GIS training or knowledge, the solution looks as that, a solution. It is not multiple different applications. It comes together in one place in space, one internet bookmark, and they can interact with that. Very quick and easy to use. And then if these are all embedded in your hub site, as I will demonstrate next, it makes it very fast for internal staff to access these resources as they perhaps have to do interdepartmental work, where one group is working with another group, the roads, and public works is working with utilities and what have you. All right, so this is our public works site here that is looking at some of our workforce starter solutions, and we've just aligned it as an example. Now, this is by all means not exactly what yours is going to look like. That's not the purpose of this. The idea is just to show you that, again, you know the power of Hub. You can embed content, so this dashboard here is live. We're actually going to take a look at this same data here in a moment, but you can organize it authoritatively and then align that with your sharing within the organization. So if we have a Parks and Rec department, we can give them access to their content through that group sharing capacity. But first, let's go into a bit of a public works scenario here, thinking of our utility, and let's look at our water maintenance workflow. So we have a couple different options here. Let's jump into one. So the workflows essentially are this, an Experience Builder wrapper, and we have a series of steps in the top right-hand corner. And if you even wanted to, you could almost number them if you wanted. The labels are entirely your choice. This all serves as an example. So the role that I'm playing in this scenario at the moment right now is your maintenance planner or a supervisor, perhaps a manager, depending on how your governance is set up within the organization. What I'm looking at are assignments for staff. I'm looking at both completed and unassigned and assigned work. The green ones are our completed ones, our gray ones are unassigned, and then we also have the gray with the dot in the inside are our unassigned ones that don't have any individual. So as I start to zoom in on these and I can click on them, we can see this assignment. It's to go and do some painting on this hydrant. So this is a work order assignment. And so that might be dispatched out to staff to fix that and actually action it. We have our workers to pick from over here. They exist in the assignment project, and we can add as many people as we need to, and they can clock in and out so that we know who's active at any one given time. And so we can use these different filters on the left to filter down based on unassigned, assigned, in progress, completed, really providing really fast and easy knowledge. So if we want to just look at our unassigned items, we can filter out all those green dots and we can start to see what's out there that needs to be done. We've got 72 pieces of work that need to be sent out to staff for rectification. But in this particular situation, we're going to play the scenario that there has been a water line break and we need to interact with the asset infrastructure. And so it's actually really easy to do that. I just click and I get. And so that makes it really easy for users. They don't need some formal GIS education. It is very simple. What you see is what you get. And so by selecting that asset now here, I can see its critical asset attributes, its install date, its material, its diameter, perhaps some criticality score or some way for me to knowing how important this asset is, maybe how many clients it serves. So I can go ahead and use this form to create a new assignment with this asset attached. I have different activities to pick from, and we can certainly add as many activities as the organization requires. So I'm going to choose water main repair. It's already selected the asset because I started with that, and that ties these two together. For a priority here, I can say, yeah, you know what, this is really critical. I need to get this out right away. And we probably should have, you know, a due date of later today that we resolve this because we need to get the service back online for residents. If there is an ID metric that needs to be tracked separately, an end user can type this in, or it can be auto-generated by processes in the background. Go ahead and create our assignment. So at this point, the assignment's created. It's not been given to somebody. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, in this particular project, I'm actually playing both roles. I'm a dispatcher. You can see my name here. But I'm also a worker. And so it's possible to actually add myself in. One of the interesting features of Workforce, and of course, this is sort of showing its capability here. This demo dataset is in Lethbridge, Alberta. I'm located in Kitchener, Ontario, and we'll see it's actually computationally putting the difference of the distance in between. This is excellent situational awareness for critical jobs to see who can respond first to a work activity based on their proximity. And so that's an additional value add that the software offers. So I'm going to go ahead and assign this out to myself. And for the next part of this scenario, we're going to go ahead and move out to the field, and I'll play that role as a field employee to respond to this incident. So my mobile device is coming up on the screen, and you can actually see that toast notification right there at the top. I get that push notification that comes right over to my device. In this case, it's an Apple iPad, but it could be a phone, it could be an Android device. These apps are supported on both platforms. And I'll see that information come into my work feed here. I can flip back and forth between my work to do and what I've already completed if I need to see that from the day's effort. So at this point, I can see that water main repair. I can click on that item. I see all the critical salient information right here if the supervisor had provided any notes. Additionally, I would see those notes. And at this point, we have some of our integrations to other applications that allow us to make this a very easy to use solution. So at this point, we can say, let's go out and edit items in field maps, right? So if we come out to field maps, we can come over here and right away interact with that asset. So we're centered on that asset. And again, very simply, we can just interact with what we have here and tap on our assets and select on them, right? So here we have one of our related assets in the nearby area, the hydrant. We could have valves, we could have mains, we could have services, whatever you want to include on the map for editing, we can do that. And as we engage into an editing session, we're able to add photos, those attachments to an asset, update its attributes, move the asset if necessary. This is all based on permissions of what I'm allowed to do. So in the top left-hand corner, you'll notice the solutions integrated nature. Based on actions that we conduct, we can actually be automatically brought back to the application we were in, or we can return there based on these dedicated prompts in the top left. And so that really makes it safe for end users. They don't have to necessarily know where do I go next. They just know either I go forward or I go backwards. So I'm going to go ahead and, I'm acknowledging that, I want to start this assignment. I've arrived on site, so we're getting that start and stop time, which is excellent performance information. So we're on site now. We're able to see this asset. Again, from a field perspective, I can click on that information, get those attributes. And so, oh, pardon me, that was the wrong assignment. Go back to my water main repair. And so we have these different other items that we can interact with down below. And so we might actually also want to record a work activity. So this loads up our Survey 123 form. This is our form-based interface. So previously there we were in our map-based interface, which is ArcGIS Field Maps. But now that we're here in our form-based, we can track activities, specifically the costs, and this is really critical. Again, the integration brings over the assets ID. We see that 8581, so that brings the data over. From here now, I can choose what group I'm operating in. I'm working within my water distribution group, and we have quite a few different activities. I'm going to choose my water main break repair. Repair has been fixed and service has been restored. Using my speech to text functionality always saves me time. Sometimes it doesn't get it right. Go ahead and take a photo and or use an existing photo from the device, right? You might have some other documentation to show different information. So I have a bunch of different photos here. Let's go ahead and choose this one of a water main break in progress. Next page we have here, and this is one of the great parts about the surveys, is we don't have to overwhelm people with hundreds of fields to fill in at a time. These are totally configurable how we want to show this information. Now that we've sort of established what we've done, we need to start tracking our costs, really important part of any work management. Putting in our labor information now, we're going to start recording who on the crew was here. And so we'll say Abraham was here for 5 hours. We're going to start to add more records. This way we can start to get that detailed cost information. So Billy was also here for 5 hours. We're starting to see our total cost add up down below. We'll also add some equipment cost. We had our backhoe here for excavation for the 5 hours. And let's also add in some material cost. Some gravel backfill, we had 1 unit of that. And let's also add in some replacement pipe for the main that we had to do that broke. So there we go. We're seeing our total cost now for our main repair coming in at a cool $4,250. And let's also update the status of the activity. That's important. So we're going to mark that as complete, check that off, and choose to send this in. Now, I will mention, you'll notice this message in the middle of the screen. If you're not aware, these apps all do support offline capability. So if staff are going to be in a situation where they don't have that interactive data and their cellular service is not working, they can still interact with the solution. Items will save in these outboxes and be queued for the next time the device can synchronize. All right, so I've go ahead, submitted my work order. At this point, I can add an additional note here. Assignment complete. And actually mark off that the assignment is done. And as I've done that now, it's actually dropped off my list, and I've got 1 less item that I need to do. Bill showed in the presentation one of the inspection forms that's used for hydrants. And that's, again, another thing that can be modeled in the process is inspection forms. You know, just looking at this existing assignment that I've already started, just to show you how that would look as another example, we can also use Survey 123 here to launch out to that kind of an inspection form. Maybe you would want staff to record what the chlorine residuals are after the break and what is the turbidity in the water after the main has been flushed. And did those critical activities actually occur? We don't want to have some dirty water back in the system. So it's just a small example of how these different elements work together in the Workforce Starter solution. Let's return back to the Office view. So in the Office view here now, items will have been added and updated. So let's go back out here and let's go to looking at our completed tasks. And now we can see our water main break has updated. So that synchronization back to the Office has occurred. That assignment here has updated, and those notes that I made are here. We move through the process though, and we come to the review stage now. This is an optional stage that supervisors or foremen can use to start to look at the work that their crews have done and make sure that there's some oversight. This might be for payroll purposes, it might just be in general. And so here's an example of feedback that's come in from the hydrant inspection process where defects have been found and basically requiring sign off. And if there are any that require further review, you know, the supervisor can open these, look at what items were mentioned. So in this case, on this hydrant inspection, cap was missing and chains were missing. These would need to be rectified. For that, it wouldn't be difficult for us to go back to the dispatch screen to create a new work order. But I can acknowledge that this work is done now, simply clicking on my edit button, coming to the bottom of this task and marking it as closed, that I've acknowledged that this has happened. And that brings 1 less item in my review pane. So this follows sort of an absence presence model. If I'm coming in here and there's nothing in here, well, that's a great day. You know, there's no other issues for me to review, and there are no other items. It looks like I can move on to other work. Speaking of the last part of the process, though, that monitoring phase, we can use ArcGIS dashboards to look at the feeds of data that we're creating. So we know we've got assignments, we know we've got work orders, we know we've got inspections. Whole variety of different things coming at us. We also obviously have these assets. And so by using these dashboards, we can look at related information. So we have inspection and work order panels. And so we can review individual inspections, look at all the information that we just saw there as well on the review screen, but here now present in a dashboard on top of that location. Plus, if there's any related work orders, we can also look at their costs. So if we look at one of these related work orders and go to the location, we can see where it is and what the total cost was. When did the staff finish this? How long did they take? Is this meeting the organization's level of service that we've agreed to complete this work in a specific period of time? And so hopefully you know the benefits of ArcGIS dashboards and how the map can, you know, dynamically change the content that we see as we move around, and these different filters make that really nice and effective for us. And so for this part of the city, we can see there's all sorts of activities going on in the South Paradise Canyon. One other key metric we're tracking here is to look at, as part of that inspection program, is how long are staff flushing for? And so this is another way we can measure the progress of our programs to see, we're hoping that we're actually flushing for a minimum of 10 minutes. And it looks like we're actually underperforming right now. So what do we need to change from an operating procedure perspective? So this has been a look at one of our workflows. Let's go ahead and look at another one. Look at trails. So coming back out to our hub page, let's move over to Parks and Recreation, and let's look at trails. In this workflow, we have a series of different pages that focus sort of on an inspection first program perspective. Maybe that's the way you really want to align one of your business processes. Now, staff obviously need to be able to capture inspections, and that's a pretty critical part of the process. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, bring up my mobile device, just getting things ready over here, and take a look at how we can start tracking inspections from the field. So here's the trails along the Grand River. And in so this situation, we're thinking about active maintenance programs, these preventative and proactive programs that municipalities need to have. And so by initiating this program, I might say that I'm going along a certain portion of the trail. We can already see in this area, there are trails as well as sign infrastructure along the trails. And I can also see any open and existing inspections that have already been conducted. So we can see an inspection. Coming over here, we can also see with the red flag, an active work order for a sign repair. And so this application can provide me that situational awareness of what's going on in the organization, what's been assigned to me, and so forth. So let's come along to this section of trail. We're sort of just north of an industrial part in Kitchener here. There's a very popular set of trails that run through this area. There's a campground here. This is Binghamans. And so it'd be very good to make sure that we're inspecting these trails on a regular basis. And so it's a very simple click and get interface again. This time we have some embedded integrations using the map pop-up. So from here, I'm able to initiate an inspection. Again, we're using our forms-based user interface, but the integration automatically brings over the ID of the path, its name, its segment ID even, because this particular trail, number 4 here, has multiple segments, and we're doing individualized segment inspections because evaluating the defects over kilometers at a time is just far too high level. We need to get more granular. So we're going to go ahead and put in this inspection, put in our name, what direction were we traveling, well, we're southbound on the trail, and let's log some deficiencies that we found along the way. This is one approach. I'm going to show another approach to logging deficiencies that are even more locationally sensitive. So we're going to say we've come across a tree. The tree is a leaner and it's greater than 6 inches. We've also come across a blown down tree that's greater than 6 inches. For vegetation control along this trail, we've got some parts of the trail that are narrowing and the vegetation is greater than 1 meter tall. And that entire length of that impacted segment was 10 meters. So go ahead and log that defect. Are there any portions of the trail that are blocked? These are just to give you ideas of what you can enter, right? You can come up with these and even base them on existing forms if they do exist. So we'll just say there's a 2-meter section of trail that's blocked. The defects have now been summarized, and I can see those in this area that has done this calculation for me. So if you do have advanced calculations we need to do, Survey 123 can be used as well to take these values that we're having, apply them to some additional formulas in the background, use attribution from the asset that's selected, and to actually make some calculations. Go ahead and attach a photo again of our trail that is narrowing, and we're starting to see that vegetation issue. Here we go. And go ahead to the next page. The condition has already been calculated based on the defects we added on the previous page, but we're giving the staff member here the opportunity to override based on their opinion. Based on what they saw, even though they answered those questions, is this really a high priority? And maybe because of the usage of the trail, the number of people, yeah, we can say this is a high priority. Lots of walkers on this trail. Fallen tree needs to be removed. So go ahead and we've logged that, and let's put in our inspection now. Complete it. That's great. Send that in. Very fast, very easy. With that integration, it was also so fast you didn't even see it. It actually automatically returned us back to field maps upon completion of the form. That's another configuration option that we can offer. All right, so that was some of our work from the field. Let's go take a look at now from in the office here. So we're able to already see our inspection information. This looks like the right one. Yep, October 21st at 2:33 p.m. Already come in, and from the office perspective, we're able to see that. And from our list of inspections, we can also see that by selecting it here, I'm actually even able to edit the response that's been provided if I feel like the information was not detailed enough. And I'm getting some nice KPIs here as well. How many inspections are in the system and how many of those inspections have issues in terms of specific problems just related to trees, because we treat those as a higher risk. And so I can obviously filter this down just to specific trail segments. So I have my filters that are in my dashboards that allow me to do that. And so that's really handy as well to automatically narrowing into specific areas. So once we have these issues, we do want to respond to them with work orders. And so again, we have another page in the workflow where we can start to look at workflows. And here again, we introduce the concept of costs. And with this particular example, we also have the idea of deferred work. Not everything we can do can happen right away. And so work orders are created in advance. So we have this ability to put work orders into a plan status. Of course, they don't have a cost because they haven't happened yet. But thinking about the situation that we just had here along the Grand, we can go ahead and select this asset and create a work order. So from the office here, I'm able to interact with that same forms-based interface and start to associate what I'd like to see resolved. So we see Parks and Recreation selected. Who do I want this to go to? This would be filled with a list of my staff members. When should this be done? Let's say by Friday of next week, medium priority. Lots of different options here of what needs to get done. Let's go ahead and just say general sign maintenance. I can attach a photo, maybe a standard operating procedure. I can populate some estimated costs if I think there's going to be some. Move our fallen tree. And go ahead and submit that in. That work order has been created. Go ahead and I can create this. And now we'll start to be able to interact, and we should have one new work order in our feed. Here's one of our work orders here that has all that information available, and this one was just created a few weeks ago to go and respond to another defect in this area. Again, we can use our dashboard filters to look at specific items, and so if we're just only going to look at planned work from a budgetary perspective now, we can start to see what are our costs and in what year do we expect those to be incurred in. What items have been dispatched and are currently out with staff and that they're responding to. Again, we could also filter down based on cost if necessary. Now, I did mention earlier that one of the ways that we might capture defects is at speed. And so for that, I'd like to demonstrate ArcGIS Quick Capture. And this particular situation, we'll open up our trail defects mode. And so here we're going to go down to trail 5, and we're going to start capturing defects as we're moving. And so you can see my GPS is being used as I walk down the trail, and this will start to indicate as I walk down where we find issues with vegetation. So again, we can say it's narrowing here, skip adding that, put in our notes. We could not put in a note if we don't want to. Here we have another leaning trail. We'll skip that, skip that. Again, you can add these photos as you go, and now it's logging these defects as they go, including that XY coordinate. So go ahead, sure, we'll add a photo. Take a photo here of my keyboard, imagining that's a defect, skip that. And again, another defect point is being added as I continue to walk or drive down, whatever that asset is. And just to show you, if we zoom in here a little bit, you can see the trail underneath me as I'm moving. So this is another approach to tracking defects that really require you to be moving. You can't necessarily be doing that in one specific place. You might have noticed here now the app has updated. And so as I progress with my work, it caches information and then sends it back to the office as we go. So let's close that off and let's return to the office. On my requests or my defects page here, I can start to monitor those defects as they come in. So let's zoom in on that trail segment. And here we can start to see some of those defects I've just logged. And by clicking on them, by selecting them, we can start to get more information. And we can acknowledge their status, start to say what we're going to do with these. Are we going to dispatch them out to staff further? Are we going to reject them? And we also get these nice graphics to know, how far in the process or how many defects that we have actually found. And so these feature layers can be used in any number of different applications. They can be added again to even the other map view that we had earlier if necessary. And so that's been a look at the trail inspections concept and capturing some defects at speed and using form and map-based interfaces. Last but not least, let's talk about facilities. Let's come over to our facilities here. We've got a variety, again, of different items that are available for our staff. If they need to just go in and edit assets, let's give them just an application to do that. But let's look at an inspection program for facilities. In this process, we have quite a few steps. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip a few, but we just want to show the versatility of the solution. So in this particular case, I'm actually in Quebec. I'm at one of their train stations here that is just outside in the suburbs of Montreal in an area known as Masouche. And here we have an example whereby I'm able to add asset inventory to the application. We have our legend, and we're obviously able to see what's going on. We can turn our layers on and off. And in this case, we're at a facility that is layer aware. So we can obviously add assets. And for this particular case, we're dealing with some point-based infrastructure that's supporting the system of systems in the building, looking at the HVAC components. So we have our air handlers and we have our furnace, but we could also digitize and add an entire new facility if we needed to. We also have a smart editor that allows us to create those features and plug them onto the map, but we can also then switch between floors. So let's go down to the basement for a moment and see what infrastructure is available there. So I can click on these items, and now I can see one of the furnaces that's down here in the basement versus if I go up to the roof, now I can see the air handler units that are up on the roof. And so this demonstration is also showing some of the different ways that we can bring in CAD information. You may have actually noticed that overlay occurring in the background.
Yep.
And we can see the actual interior layout of the building transposed on top of our GIS map elements. So that's core. That could be step one. Step one, could be that let's add new assets for staff. Step two could be, again, dispatching staff. All right, these pumps that you've mentioned, looks like we need to get awareness on all of them. Well, probably one of the steps that we need to consider is making sure that every one of the ones that we do know of is getting inventoried, and we know where it is, what its critical attributes are. We probably should be grabbing those, and providing an assignment to go assess them. Let's go ahead and filter out our assigned completed work, and let's just look at our unassigned. We have none right now. So if we go ahead, choose one of our assets here, we've got our furnace. Let's go ahead and create an assignment against this. So we have a variety of different assignments available here, right? So we can, I should have chosen an air handler unit. Let's choose an air handler. Perfect, air handler, create assignment. Really easy to make a change to your process there if you think you've made a mistake. Got my asset ID coming in. Let's go ahead and assign this out to myself right away. And we'll just say this one's a medium priority. And we'll just call this annual inspection. Could be an annual inspection. It could be that initial inspection you mentioned to just collect that information at the get-go. Created that assignment. And of course, now it's going to become available to me out in the field. Let's do that. Bring up my screen sharing here. All right, we actually just got that notification. You might have seen it come and go there really quickly, but we do get notifications as new assignments are added. We can see the new one here that is sort of in that unread status is in this bold look. Go ahead and choose that there. So I gotta navigate to this new assignment. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And we can see here with ArcGIS Navigator, it's gonna calculate that fastest route between from where I'm currently located and then bring me over to that location. Now that we've got in here, let's go ahead and start our assignment. And from here, again, we can use the integrations to record those work activities, to actually open up the facility map where we can interact further with our asset inventory. Let's go ahead and do that. So as we zoom in here now, we can see our air handler unit selected on the roof. With this air handler now here, move that dropped pin and actually select the asset. And again, using embedded integration with these dynamic and configurable map pop-ups, And so we have an air handler inspection here that's going to ask us any types of questions, standard operating procedure that we need to do. Now, let's go back to our map and or back to our assignment. So we have our assignment. Let's go ahead and add some notes. Completed annual inspection and updated asset attributes. And that marks it as completed. Returning to the office, let's take a look at our monitor tab. We have a few here in the middle. We're just going to focus on the monitor tab right now. We can see any of those inspections we brought in. We can see any of the issues that were logged during the overall facility inspection. Now, I didn't show you the overall facility inspection, but it's just another way to approach inspections and see these related issues, which are in a related GIS table. And so we can bring those into the ArcGIS dashboards. We're getting that really nice KPI in the top right. How many problems do we have ongoing in our buildings? And based on their different categories, foundation, walls, stairs, on-site assets such as manholes, what is the overall spread of conditions? How can we use that to inform our planning processes, perhaps for an asset rehabilitation or maintenance program?